Hey mages, welcome to today's video, and today we are looking at the current top 5 best budget meta decks that I've found for you. These decks are all, players are playing them in going towards Mythic. They've all got really good win percentages. I've sourced them off Untapped GG and places like that. And they're basically really good decks, but they have less rares in. Now, we have got, some really cool decks here. Some are going to be ones that you know, some maybe people have forgotten about. There is little as 8 rares in one of the decks, and I think it only goes as high as 12 or 13 in the maximum rares that I found for these budget meta decks, which is still super low compared to some of the other decks. You look at mid-range decks of the Golgari, anything like that, Domain, 30 plus decks, as we covered in my previous video. So if you haven't seen the previous video as well, check that after this, where I made budget versions of 5 meta decks, where I took the decks with 30 plus rares and a couple of the more popular decks and put them as starter decks ready for you to build them and then build up to the full power decks. But these decks are literally ready and, just for you to go and play on ranked. Now, if you want to get any of these decks in paper, like I always have to mention my great sponsors, Cardmarket, a lot of you will know about them. Check the link down below, clicking that helps support the channel as well. But without further ado, let's get on to today's decks. So we're going to start with the highest amount of rares and then work our way down, so make sure you stay to the end as I talk through each deck. Whether it's the deck for you, you need to, look at the play patterns of each deck, and I will talk about that. And, basically, sometimes you have to choose a deck with what rares you have in your collection, and that's totally fine because all of these decks will hopefully help you grind up the ladder. The first one up is the 13 rare, which is really cool, Blue-White Enchantment, one of the new decks in the meta. This deck is very good. It's my type of deck. It's not really a controlling type of deck, but I do like playing Blue-White. And if you wanted to, these are all best of 1 decks, of course, but if you wanted to take this into best of 3, you can obviously make a sideboard. If anybody wants to take this into best of 3 and wants some sideboard advice, just put it down in the comments and I'll do my best to let you know what I think and my points on that. But this deck is all about building up a massive creature. It's a bit like if you play Commander, Voltron. So Voltron is when you build up a commander, maybe put lots of enchantments on it, and then go in for these one-hit strikes sometimes. And this is what this deck can do. So this was reprinted in standard Ethereal Armor. It's absolutely brilliant. Enchant creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So this deck is running 30 enchantments in total. That is massive, 30 enchantments. So you know that when you've got your aura on there, this Ethereal Armor, it could be absolutely huge. You got cards like Optimistic Scavenger. Whenever enchantment you control enters, you get to put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So more ways to build it up, not just by having the Ethereal Armor. We've got ways and triggers to happen when enchantments just come into play as well. Now, if you want to make them cheaper, Inquisitive Glimmer needs to be on the field. Enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast, and then unlock spells cost 1 less to cast as well, because this does run some of the new rooms. So first one we got is Grand Entry and Elegant Rotunda. So when you unlock this door, create a 1/1 Glimmer token, but it's an enchantment, so we'll add to the Ethereal Armor. And then for 3 mana, when you unlock this door, put a 1/1 counter on each up to 2 target creatures. So getting these creatures big and massive. So you don't just have to rely on that one creature, you can gradually build up a few creatures on the field. Bottomless Pool is in there. You can return up to 1 target creature's to owner's hand. Nice 1-drop this. And then when it has Locker Room for 5 mana, when one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. So a bit of card draw there, and if the games are going long, you can do your Locker Room. But I've found sometimes that building the creatures up early, you can get some quite quick aggro wins with this. It's a very interesting deck with all the aggro around it that this is sort of going in there. We have a bit of removal. We've got Sheltered by Ghost, probably one of the best cards from the new set. When this enters, exile target non-land permanent opponent control, so it can hit anything other than lands, which is absolutely amazing. Enchantments, planeswalkers, anything. And then it gives us Ward 2 as well, so more protection and lifelink. So this really is one of the most important cards that you would like in your opening hand. If not, you want the rescue, because that gives your creature hexproof as well, because we do know the amount of removal now with the 3-year rotation that is currently in standard, and it's absolutely just off the charts, and that's just a whole video in itself probably. But yeah, new cards as well. This is a very new deck, so if you haven't got a lot of new cards, this is still one to build up to, and I think it's very good. for you to build up to, and you know that it's going to last a while as well, because these cards obviously won't rotate for a while, as we just spoke about. Enduring Innocence, a 2/1 lifelinker. When it dies, it then becomes the enchantments. You still get that trigger of when a creature with power 2 or less enters, you draw a card. And we've got Inquisitive, we've got Gremlin as well. The Silent Hall Creeper, which is great because it can't be blocked, so getting your Ethereal Armor on this is one of the important rares in the deck without a doubt. There's a lot of other rares. Of 7 of the 13 rares are just in the land, so you know, if you have to go budget land for a bit, you will. You won't be as consistent, but you know, this is one rare that this deck that you really do want to craft, because putting your Ethereal Armor on this and making it unblockable is just absolutely brilliant. Talking of lands, like I said, it's got 4 Seachrome Coast, 3 Flood Farm Verge. And then we've got a mixture of basics, a couple of the Tranquils to gain life, and then some, you know, lots of basics there as well. But the idea of this deck, like I said, is to build up a creature, preferably something like your Silent Hall Creeper, drawing cards, adding counters, making more tokens onto the field, and then you've got your protection that you really need to keep there. Now, obviously, Rescue, I forgot to mention, does have flash, so you can actually keep the mana up when opponent does try to remove it. All in all, a very good deck, and definitely fun to play, and will get you a lot of wins. So it probably wouldn't be a budget meta deck without mentioning Mono Red. This is a 12 rare version. There's so many different versions of Mono Red, but I found this one for 12 rares, and it's been getting really good, you know, 57, 58% marks, which I think is pretty sweet. Now, the rares that it does run, the 12 rares is in the creatures: Slick Shot, Show Off, Mana-Filled Mouse, which is, you know, a really important creature. I'm missing a couple of these to craft, so I've not actually tried this deck, but we know what Mono Red's like. This is great because it gives double strike or trample at the beginning of combat, which is really good when you got cards like Monstrous Rays that can give stuff other trample, and +1/1 and +2/0 as well. Bigger, you know, 1/0, and then more draw cards for a mouse, and we do have mouse in this as well. There's lots of ways to trigger and stuff like this, so not like the last deck, but it is a deck that has a few enchantments. Demonic Ruckus, +1/1. Menace is good, but this deck is all about aggro, and I'm sure you, even if you're a new or beginner player to MTG Arena, you've come across Mono Red quite a lot, because this is the most played deck without a doubt, because it's consistent. The games are quick and fast, so if you want a deck then you haven't got much time to play, this is a deck for you, because you can literally just pummel loads of games in, win or lose. You'll win quick or lose quick. That is exactly what this deck is really good for definitely for players that don't have all day to play Magic Arena. Other creatures in the deck, Heartfire Hero is good because you build this up, and when it dies it deals damage equal to opponent, which is really strong. But this is more based around the creature version, and a few little pumps. Monastery Swift Spear in there, and then we just have some either to the dome, to opponent, or to creatures. We have 4 Shock and 4 Lightning Strike. So with this deck, a lot of times you're testing the waters. If you're playing your Swift Spear turn 1, or your Heartfire Higher, sometimes it's great turn 1, because if you've got cards in your hand where you can pump up next turn, and if opponent doesn't have a card like Cut Down, but they will always try and remove this, and I have noticed a lot of times they will obviously remove this over a Monastery Swift Spear sometime as well. So if you've got, you know, sometimes the opening play, if you haven't got the right cards to build this up so it deals damage straight away, is to play this, and then you might be able to go in with your attack and your Monstrous Rage and getting bigger straight away with the Monastery Swift Spear, then the Monstrous Rage going on. Plotting your Demonic Ruckus and plotting your Show Off so you can play this at the same turn as another creature. But Mana-Filled Mouse is definitely one that you want to play after you've played one of your creatures. So this has Offspring, because it's nice to get the trigger on this if you can, if opponent's tapped out. Putting this down with, you know, you can obviously put it on itself because it's target mouse. But I do like that this can come down and then just maybe give it to something else as well. So I think it's pretty cool. Now, giving it to the Heartfire just becomes massive, because if you put your double strike on this and then you build it up with your Monstrous Rage and everything, and then, you know, potentially they have to block, but then it dies, but it's got massive power. It just really does some serious damage, this deck. The other creature is another mouse, so another target for the Manifold. Haste Prowess builds up, becomes target of spell ability for the first time, exile the top card. and you may play that card as well. But with so much haste in here, with the Challenger, the Show Off, the Monastery as well, this is a very, very aggressive deck. And yeah, not much more to say about Mono Red, but if you like quick games and quick wins, and definitely a consistent deck, this is the deck for you. Now, I said there was a few different iterations of a Mono Red. Now, this does run Calissaur, but it isn't the version that will play this very budget, so it'll play just the mountain, so you can't play this, but what you're playing it for is Burn Together. So target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target, then sacrifice it. Now, this is a deck that's, is more renowned for playing with Heartfire Hero. Sorry, I just can't get my words out today, because there's a lot of pump spells in here, and one of the best new ones is Turn Inside Out. So this was the new addition to this deck. Target creature is +3/0 and end of turn, and when it dies you get to manifest Dread as well. Now, this is a massive pump for the Callus, but what also got added to this deck was this. Now, for Leyline of Resonance, you will always come across this, and the opponents always seem to have it in their hand, so hopefully that works for you as well, because when I've played against this deck, they've always got one, sometimes two in their opening hand. This is a card that I know Wizards are looking at already, possibly to ban. So if you do craft it and it does get banned, you're going to get your wild cards back. So you are safe there, because that's what they do on MTG Arena. In paper, totally different. If it gets banned in Standard, then you've just paid for it and you lose it for Standard. Which is what is sometimes good about Arena. But yeah, they are looking at this already, and that just tells you how good this card is. It's very, very powerful. Getting that copy spell, copying Felonious Rage +2, then comes +2/0, and if they've already targeted your creature, you target something else. Might of the Meek, double draw cards, double +1/0, Monstrous Rage, double, everything. This is great in conjunction with the Leyline. And then when you're building all of these up, like Cacophony Scamp that can be sacrificed, and then you've got the Heartfire, and then you're throwing them at opponents with your Burn Together. It's just so much power. Now, this can turn to win. It's that type of deck. So, although I said the last deck was if you want to play some fast games, you ain't got much time, this is even faster. You can potentially win turn 2. A lot of the same cards in here. You will have to craft, rares for this, because there isn't that in the other deck. But you've got a lot of crossover cards here between the two decks. You can try the two versions. You've got Empire Challenger for 3 of. You've got 4 of these. So there is, a lot of crossover cards, but very, very powerful and consistent deck, and can still win even if this is not on the field. It's not essential that you have this card in your opening hand and put it on there. It's not essential at all, because you've got the tools to build up, pump up, and get some aggro wins. So very much like the last deck, slight different, obviously, variation and slight different plan on this, not more on the aggro creatures, although this relies on getting massive double pump spells and then flinging at your opponent. So now with just 9 rares, we have Mono Black Discard, and I've been having some absolutely amazing fun with this deck personally. I've played this, I was literally at 1.9-1 with this deck, and Obliterator was amazing. Absolutely just won me more than 70% of my games. It is just an absolute beast. And, it seems to be a bit forgotten about. Now, you will see this probably getting popular again, because it is picking up steam, this deck. Runs a few different cards, like I said, the Obliterator's in here as well, but very much like the Mono Black standard deck list, but also runs 2 Skullcap Snail. This is when it enters, target opponent exiles a card from hand. Now, this is in there because Exile is very, very good at the moment, because, reanimated decks are out there, so getting opponents to exile cards, the full 4 playset of Ruthless Negotiation is really good, because we don't want opponents just chucking away something good that they can reanimate turn 4. You still got, the discard package, so they still possibly are going to do that, but you really want to obliterate opponents' hands. And when they get down to that one creature in the field or anything like that, you've got Liliana's coming in for the -2. You've got your Go for the Throat as well. But you really are making opponents have nothing in hand with this deck, and then either winning with some massive attacks because they've got to top draw the removal. They tend to not be able to block because they will just lose their lands or lose their, they've got nothing on the field. or you just sit there and lay back with Shelley and just let them just basically just draw cards and lose 2 life each turn as well. Bandit's Talent is another win con because when they got no cards in hand, the level 2 just drains opponent as well. 4 Hopeless Nightmare can be a win con sometimes when they've got no life, you know, and you just bang them for the last 2 life. I really do love this deck. The 24 basics is brilliant because no rare lands needed for this deck. So a very budget but very powerful deck. Now sometimes you're going to get done by the turn 2 Leyline deck like we just saw in a mono red deck, but you will win your percentage of decks with percentage of matches with this deck, and it does run close. Well, for me, it runs stupidly, you know, with 9-1 at one point, and I think I ended up about 11-2. So a deck for me that I've never had stats with any other deck. So that was obviously involved in a major bit of luck. I'm not just going to say it was skill and the deck, because you do need luck on Arena, but it just proves that when you've got the right cards in hand, this deck can certainly win its fair share. Give this a try if you can. Let me know what you think. Hopefully you have the same as me, and I know there's going to be some people who said, I lost 20 matches on the trot. What are you talking about? But that's just the way it is. You know, I wouldn't lie about what I did with it. I'm not the world's best player, but even I got some wins, and I was very happy with this deck. So the final deck is just 8 rares, and it's Dimir Toxic. Dimir Poison, a deck that's probably forgotten about quite a bit, but a lot of players are picking this up because, you know, people have forgotten about it, basically, and it can get some really good wins. It's all about getting poison counters. So if you haven't, you know, a new player, you're just coming here looking for some real budget decks, poison, you just have to get the opponent to 10 or more poison counters and they lose the game. So not 20 life, it's 10 or more poison counters. And then you have cards that proliferate. So proliferate is choosing number of permanents. Then you give them another counter of the counter they've already got. So it's another way to soup up and get the wins quicker. Even use your Whisperer Dross here. It doesn't matter if they just got nine poison counters. You just use this on any creature, and then you proliferate and give your opponent the death. So this is never a dead card if opponent's got poison counters, is what I really like about it. It's got a few creatures in there. Just the 4, it's all about instant speeds and sorcery speeds and sacking and everything like that, returning permanents, countering some spells, looking at your stuff. The one creature it does run is Bilious Skull Dweller in this view. Death Touch, so it can trade off with a lot of creatures, and Toxic 1, so you can get that poison counter if you can. It's always good to try and get, obviously, the poison counter first before, but if you have to use proliferate cards first to stay alive, then you have to do it. So you have to use your Drowning Anchor sometimes to kill something. You have to use your bringing in your Experiment Augury, and you can't proliferate to find the card that you can get, like a Prologue to Phrasis, where each opponent will get that first poison counter. This is a great card in your opening hands if you do get it, because you get to poison counter them and then get to draw a card. Bounce with proliferate here. So sometimes you bounce to win the game and proliferate. It's just got loads of different ways to deal with stuff. Anointing of Affliction, exiling, very good as we previously spoke about. More than 3 counters, you just exile any creature, which is wicked, and for 2 mana, that is just massive. Card draw that can potentially cost you 1 mana, 1 blue mana, will cost 2 less to counter. If you've got poison counters on there, 3 or more for opponent, then you get to draw 2 cards. But then we do have this where each opponent will get that poison counter, as a black card can do. Sometimes they will drain you 2 life, and then you get to draw 2 cards as well. We can even attack some Planeswalkers with Vraska, but the opponent does get to choose, so you can't choose it yourself. So sometimes this is, you know, not great. They can sack a token and still leave there, but you do what you got to do with that. I really enjoy this deck. A lot of the rares, I think, is it all the rares are in the yeah, I think all the rares, yes they are, all the rares are in the land base. So 4 Dart Slick, you got 2 Undercity Sewers and 2 Myrics that makes the Toxic tokens. So if you haven't got all the rare lands, this is the one that you really do like, you know, but you could probably go 1 if you want to make this even more budget. You want, you know, potentially untapped lands coming in and the colours you need, because, you know, you can see it's a lot of 2 mana spells, and you want to be able to play these 2 mana spells. So the land is obviously very important. Now, If you've just got a new account, you're a brand new player, and you haven't got those, but you've got commons or uncommons in your wild cards, and you feel like building this deck because it's a good, a good deck, and you haven't got the lands, you can build up to the lands, but it just won't be as consistent because you'll have basics. Sometimes you'll just get screwed by Arena, and then you just got tapped lands coming in as well, like a Dismal Backwater, but it's still used in there, and still a good card because with all the aggro around, gaining that one life is, also important as well sometimes. But this is a very, very budget deck and can certainly get you the wins. And I played this at my last Standard Showdown event, not the previous one, but the previous one before that. And I found it really fun to play, and I won like 1 week. I won the first week, went 3-0, and then I went 2-1 the following week with this practically exact deck. So no new cards in this one. We just got a couple of it was an updated land for me, but a deck that will just get you some wins, and people just don't like playing poison. And a very fun deck. So there is 5 budget meta decks for you, the top 5 for me at the moment. These decks are all decent, so if you've got any questions about them, plays or cards that you might need to swap in and swap out because you quite haven't got the deck, just put it in the comments down below and I will obviously help you. And I do get back to everyone. It leaves me a comment because I'm very appreciative of it, and it might take me a couple of days sometimes, but I always will get back to you. Deck lists are all in the description as well, and please give me a follow where I keep them all over on Moxfield. I appreciate everyone that follows me over there as well. Just want to say thanks to my Patreons. If you want to support me for all the and you enjoy all this content that I do with the budget and sourcing and stuff like that out for you, please just do that. As little as $2 a month, you can get in there as one of the Patreon members, and that really does help me in potential for me to make more videos as well, and gives me more time. So I do appreciate every single one of you for liking, comment, all that jazz. But you lot take care, and I'll see you on the next video.